Yeah. All right. Well, it's 6:30, so it is my honor to welcome Mychal Threets. So, how did I say your last name wrong?
Mychal Threets.
Threets. I apologize, Mychal Threets. Mychal was raised by libraries. He got his first library card at the age of 5. He got his first library job at the library where he got his first library card. That's cool. He is currently the supervising librarian of that very same library. He can be chronically found online, TikTok, Instagram famous. And he uses nearly every social media platform. Mychal uses social media to tell the tales of the library and to encourage and support library joy. And we are so honored to have him as our speaker. And take it away, Mychal.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm so sorry. How exactly are we running this conversation?
Sure, yeah.
Totally. Oh,
No, yeah. So yeah, we're just gonna dive straight into Q&A. Unless there's anything you want to add before we start Q&A. But if not, then we can definitely just get started.
Yeah, no. I'm sorry. Yeah, no. I think for me, I went to San Jose State. I always tell people think it's a huge accomplishment. I went through the program in 4 semesters, but I only did that because I wanted people to know that I graduated with my master's degree. My family was very sick when I was in the program, so I just wanted to make sure that they knew I had gotten my degree. As much as I'm very much one of the people who's like, I've only truly used like portions of my program here or there. I'm still very thankful for it. I've talked to a few people who went to school with me since, especially in the last few months. But I definitely am proud to have gone to SJSU, which is the program where most of Solana County Library, where I work, went to school. So it's very cool to be talking with everybody after having been a librarian for now almost 5 years.
Great. All right. Thank you. Anyone, if you feel free to unmute or even type in the chat any questions you have for Mychal, and we'll just go as they come. Oh yeah, go ahead, Christina.
Hi, I was wondering, what made you decide to start posting on social media and more specifically about your story about library kids?
That's a great question. So I started talking about I started posting my stories to social media probably 5, 6 years ago when I became a children's librarian in Vallejo. I only started sharing it to videos this year, of 2023, but in probably 5 years ago, I started sharing it to Facebook. Just sharing it. I think it started by I became a children's librarian. I started going to school sites, going to kindergartens, going to various classes, and just seeing how unhinged kids are, hearing their crazy stories, hearing about that's like when I first started. As much as like it's honestly it's taken me probably 5 or 6 years of being a librarian to like adopt to what I do on social media and call kids library kids instead of calling them by their gender. I think that's really like when it first like dawned on me like how interesting kids are, how interesting library kids are, is that just the things that they would tell me, even going to schools and just say, oh, like they would always ask like, oh, can I come by your library? I say, oh, if your mom's okay with it, if your dad's okay with it, absolutely. And then that's when they would be like, oh, I have 2 moms, I don't have a dad. Or they would be like, they would break my heart and they'd be like, oh, my dad's dead. And I'd be like, ah, that's on me. You've inadvertently crushed my heart. That's not your fault. But I think that's like when I learned, and I started telling more stories, just seeing how silly they are. I would go to various schools, tell them about the summer reading program. My library is very lucky to have a fairly, not a large budget, but a big enough budget to be able to show some really cool programs, like animal programs, having alligators, and just hearing kids be like coming to their school, telling them, oh, we're gonna have an alligator. You might be able to touch it, and them being like, I don't trust your face, like totally randomly. Like that's to this day, that's one of my favorite stories. Is one of the kids telling me, I don't trust your face around alligators, and I'm like, I agree with you. I am not the one who is qualified to bring that alligator to the library. And just I think just those stories just made me laugh. They made my day. And I've suffered for a very long time from mental health struggles. So I think every time I tell a story, um, it's either for myself, like trying to push myself through the day, or it's because someone else has messaged me um, via social media or messages or messenger. So every time I share a story, it's because someone has reached out to me or because I've had a hard day. And then I worked in marketing. So I'm telling you a whole big giant story. I worked in marketing for the library, and that's like when I I always knew the power of social media. That's why I took social media for libraries at SJSU. Again, chronically online. I'm a MySpace kid. I'm a Zonga kid. So it's always been a big part of my life. So fast forward, go through marketing. I became a supervising librarian this year. And then honestly, the first video that went viral like this year is honestly like that's when that was the first video that I started like making an actual video for. I don't know why it worked. I think from hearing from people, it's trying to be authentic, trying to be genuine. Just I'm a gigantic library nerd. And just trying to just show like how much it matters to them. And it was the story of the kid who asked if I'm a boy librarian or a girl librarian. And that was a video that got a million plus views. And when at the time I was still hoping for 1,000 views. I think literally I don't know if this even answers your question. I think like at that video I literally had I think I had, and to be fair, I don't look at the followers I have. It rises my anxiety to know the followers, but at the time I had I think 3,000 followers. And it increased so rapidly that I literally thought I was like this is a weird dream. Why am I dreaming about social media, the library social media? This doesn't make sense. But it just reached so many people, and I love that. So I think that's a long 2-3 minute way of answering your question. So I think I just started sharing the stories just to try to reach my library community, try to reach the library people, try to show them how awesome their job is. Whenever I tell these stories, whenever I talk, I always try to tell people that I think I'm assuming everybody here is going to library school. Is it something that you see almost every single day, every single week as a library person? The stories I tell, I think I acknowledge that I have a unique way of looking at like simple library interactions, but there are so many library opportunities, library moments that happen for people every single day in the public library.
Thank you. Well, I have to say real fast that my first graders love your videos when I show it to them. And so they get really excited on our library day. And I think part of that is that you do resonate with your audience, adults and children alike. So thank you.
No, thank you. I think that's what you just said is like literally the biggest thing to me is I have never once considered making the videos I've made for library kids. Like I always like hoped that they would see it, but I never thought that they would connect with it. So the amount of times that I'm told that library kids watch the videos is shocking to me. Like I was lucky enough to attend an event with Jeff Kinney last night, and like did like a whole game show with him and his team. And like afterwards, like there was like a few kids, because he was raising money for libraries. And there were a few kids who were like, "You did so great up there. I'm so proud of you." And I'm like, wow, like these kids like are so amazing. So I think that's always the biggest shock to me. And even I think even like the story I'm going to share on social media tomorrow is going to be about how like a kid walked up to me today as there was a class visit going on in the library when I got there, because I went to a meeting, came back, and I was walking around, and the kid was like, "Afro Man." I was like, that's a weird thing to call me. I do have an afro, but Afro Man, we'll go for it. That's a world renowned person, but so be it. But he just was referring to my giant afro because he watched my videos with his mom on her phone. So yeah, so no, thank you so much. I'm every single time someone tells me that a library kid watched my videos or knows who I am before coming to the library, is a giant shock, but it's a badge of honor to me. I do hope to one day return to becoming a children's librarian.
That's awesome. Oh, sorry, I didn't want to. Do you want to do it, Tyro?
Oh yeah, we'll go ahead. We had another question posted in the Q&A section. I'll just go ahead and copy paste it in the chat. This one was from Aaron. This is the second one on the chat. Sorry about that. It's she says, your videos demonstrate an abundance of compassion, not only on your part, but from patrons too. Can you please elaborate on the importance of humanity in the library?
Yeah, absolutely. I think compassion is necessary, and as honored as proud as I often am by library workers, I think every library worker is so burnt out that compassion is very difficult for people to have. It's just like that we go through so much. I think as much as I focus on the positivity of libraries, there's so many difficulties. Before I quickly turn back to the positive, I think for me, like I've been a supervisor since January of this year, and I've written almost 150 incidents in the public library that I work for, largely involving the unhoused community. So I think that's what I go through with the compassion that people are talking about, that I demonstrate. And it's just important because it's what I say almost every single video, is that the library is literally a place for the community. I think that was always my favorite thing to tell. But that was always my favorite question for Q&A when I would visit schools, that I was asking, like, who do you think owns the library? Who runs the library? And they would of course say, oh, the mayor, the president, the governor. And I would always like eventually lead up saying, you do. The library is yours. Like, that's the whole purpose of the library, is a community. I think that's the importance to me of libraries, is the compassion. I treat people like it's I assume it's their worst day whenever I interact with them at the library. That's why I incessantly bother people by saying hi to them. Often I've been, especially as a supervisor, I think I've been cursed out every single day as a library worker. And I just know that the unhoused people, they're just used to facing trauma, facing hostility. And I'm like, I'd rather shock their world and just respond accordingly. So to me, I think compassion is the only way that we convince people that the library is for them, and that they can improve. Like, as often as people unfortunately do cause problems at the library, which is not as often as I've just made it sound, but it does happen. I respect that whenever there's a kid around, they don't do that. They calm down as much as possible. So I think that's what's the interesting world. That's the interesting world of libraries, is even people who are broken, who have nowhere to go, who are like plagued by like I hate to say true mental illness, because I suffer from mental illness, but from schizophrenia, other things that they can't control, they're still somehow amazingly able to control themselves in like the most vulnerable population that we serve. So I think that's my whole point. That's the importance to me about humanity, is that is what the library is. I mean, the library is the last place in the world where there is no expectation of finances. You don't have to come into the library, and you don't even have to show your library card. You don't have to have a library card. I literally today, in a span of 45 seconds, I gave, I think, 13 people a one-time pass for the computers, and they each were like, I need a computer pass, and just printing them out one after another, no questions asked. And that's brand new for my library system. I'm sorry if you can hear my cat chewing in the distance. It is her dinner time. But no, to me, I think literally libraries don't exist without humanity, and that is the importance of libraries, just being able to serve them. And that's what I'm trying to do with my social media, just remind library workers, soon to be library workers such as yourselves, that the humans are the focus of what we do, as much as we're also real people. And I often feel that the community forgets the library people are real people. I think that people, as much as I believe that library people are superheroes, I think the community forgets that library people should not have to be superheroes, that we don't actually have capes, that we're doing the best we can, that we work 8 to 5, 9 to 6. And we're just trying to make it through each day while being remarkably empathetic and going through our own struggles in lives. So I hope that answered the question. And I just think that compassion is a wonderful attribute of library people that is often overlooked, and it's not something that not enough library people put on the resume. That I honestly think it is an attribute that all of you have the potential to promote to the world.
Awesome. Our next question is from Chelsea. So when discussing social media and libraries, where do you think the balance between accommodating the trends of social media, particularly book talk, and a wider variety of authors/topics, etc.? I get frustrated when I notice my local library has tons of book talk books because it's crowds out the wider variety of lesser known books I want to see.
That's very difficult. I think it depends on where you are for for social media. I don't necessarily care personally about trends. I know that's hard to hear from me, a person who I know as of yesterday has 300 plus thousand followers. But I think that's also, I think that's important to remember as you pursue your social media, is to act as though you have 300,000, 500,000, a million followers. I've literally reshared videos. I posted because I think they're especially funny. I was like, I worked hard on those ones. Let's give it another shot. And I've seen like videos that got maybe 1,000 views years ago. I've reposted them and they've gotten 100,000, 200,000, 300,000 views. So I think that's what's interesting about library social media is it really is like the amount of reach you have that impacts social media. Like you honestly could have the world's greatest idea. And I would hope that the world's greatest idea would be seen by millions, by trillions, but it definitely is based on your reach, on your audience potential. And I think that's where you have to find the balance. Like unfortunately, I think the trends are how you break into social media. Like I'm not sure how familiar everybody is with what I've done via social media. A lot of people first discovered who I am, I believe, for social media via the Adult Scholastic Book Fair attempts that I made. I think that was like my first like big launch into social media, even though I've been doing social media for 20 plus years. So I think that's the balance. It's just like messing with the trends, but also having fun. Like my library, I do TikTok and Instagram for myself personally, and then also for my library. I think my library has very much embraced being proud of being cringe. Like we're like, let's just go full force into cringe. Let's just do what we can. The CEO of being late to trends is kind of like our vibe. So I think that's what you have to do. Just try to like spin. There's so many trends every single day. Like if you type book talk into TikTok, you'll come up with 1,000 ideas. And even book talk, like I'm probably gonna do like an Usher confessions to type of theme, like giving my own like confessions of book talk. Like I've never read Colleen Hoover, I've never read James Patterson. I dog ear books. I unfinish. I remove books from Goodreads, all of those kind of things. So I think that's the balance. Really, it's just like if you can like if you give enough enthusiasm, give enough genuinity, adoration for what you're trying to do, people will see it. They will take notice of that. I think that's been my favorite thing about like people ask me like one of my favorite impacts of my social media is that there are other library people telling their stories, doing their thing on social media. And I love it. Like whenever I see like somebody has like 70,000, 200,000 likes for their library stories, because people tag me in all those stories, and I love it every single time. And I'm like, yeah, that's the whole purpose. Like people don't believe me when I say I don't like all the attention. I do. As proud as I am to be here. I'm very excited for when one of you takes a mantle and starts doing these kind of things. So I think the balance is very difficult. It really is a person to person, library to library. There is no tried and true way of doing it. I think just being genuine, being happy, getting the fun, the joy of libraries across is the goal, and you'll reach who you need to reach. I think you'll be shocked to find like how many people, like if you just talk about random books, they'll love to see it as much as like I've never read Colleen Hoover, so I don't entirely knock Colleen Hoover, but I do know that she's all over TikTok. But there still is like Jerry Craft has a new book, Kelly Yang's new book is coming out, Jason Reynolds is always putting out something new, and those kind of books never like trend on TikTok. Even like CJ Tudor is regarded to be like the female Stephen King of the world, and not a lot of people know about CJ Tudor. So really, I think just spinning your story. If you read a book and you love it, just show your genuine love for it. There's even like a TikTok account where they like share one star reviews of books. So just find your niche. If you just start doing 2-star reviews of books, I'm sure you could stumble into something. So I think that's a balance, is just doing what you have to do to like break into that library social media if that's what you're aiming for, and then just turn it into what you're trying to do. I think that's I tell people to share their stories, But you don't have to do what I do. I like all the. I think that's what's hard is that there are difficulties when it comes to social media. Like I recently stopped reading the comments, just because some people are negative, but I still get every single notification flash across my phone. So even though I see like a few negative things, there's still so many positivities that overshine those, and I try to take those responses and turn them into a story. So all the stories I share are real stories. Like kids, I don't have any kids. I'm 33 years old, but kids really are that wild, and I'm always shocked to find like how much imagination, how much curiosity, and how much just joy they show, and just love and curiosity for books and the library world. Like again, I don't want to keep on talking about the program last night, but it was very cool. This is for Jeff Kinney's new Diary of a Wimpy Kid book, and literally I think I took a seat in the audience 20 minutes before, and probably half of the kids in the audience were reading the book that they had gotten that day. So I think just a genuine love for books, that like that adoration for it. They don't know yet that reading books isn't cool, even though we're trying to make it cool. It's still there. So yeah, that's a difficult question that I think it's a case by case basis. But I think once you just start tackling it authentically, you'll get there.
Awesome. Thank you. That's beautiful. Caroline asks, are there any book fair updates? Maybe not with Scholastic?
So there are no book fair updates from me, other than that they did actually contact me prior to their release their nationwide statement, that they have reversed their decision. So that's huge. Good news is that they have removed their diverse collection. The celebrate every voice, share your own story collection will be disbanded in January, and they will return to offering diverse collections in every single book fair that they offer. So that's the only update that I have. If you don't know what my Scholastic Book Fair for Adults mission is, it's just having it. Which I have family members who are sober. So much I always say that I want to have this book fair in breweries and wineries. It's not because I believe that everybody drinks. It's just because people do drink. And it just is like I've just seen other people in demand for it, trying to have like that book fair in the breweries, in the wineries, all of the nostalgic items, the Lamborghini posters, the giant erasers, the Lisa Frank. Just trying to experience all of that. And for me, I'm just always hopeful that whatever funds are raised at these places, that they'll be dedicated to the local schools, to make sure that every kid leaves with a book, with a good book. Everybody gets to experience like the joy, the nostalgia that the Scholastic Book Fair used to be. And I always say, so again, I was a homeschool kid, so I only ever went to one Scholastic Book Fair. But there's so many kids who never got to experience the Scholastic Book Fair either at all, because they were homeschooled, because they didn't have the finances. And then there were kids who never got to get a book, they never got to get a poster, all the cool things that it should be. So that's been my whole purpose for that. And then just dedicate the funds to the local schools, trying to make sure that every kid does leave with a good book. So I'm hopeful that with Scholastic reversing their decision, that we can start pursuing it again. I think I've come close once or twice to them agreeing to say that I can have it in a local brewery, local winery, but they are willing to let me have about a year ago, they were willing to let me host one in my local library. And I think that's a good start, because there's so many people who are like, Scholastic Book Fair, that's Barnes and Noble. And I'm like, that's not true. That's not what Barnes and Noble is. There's no Lamborghini posters and such things at Barnes and Noble. So like I get what people are saying, but like it's just such a unique feel about a Scholastic Book Fair, and that's what I'm hoping to create if they ever allow it. And that's also why people are always like, oh, why don't you do it with a local bookstore with that? And I'm like, oh, I could do that, but it's like the Scholastic Book Fair is what everybody's trying to make be nostalgic. That's what people are trying to create. There have been plenty of Scholastic adult book fairs across the nation. That is, I would not at all be the first for that. It's been done thousands of times, and it's wonderful. I hear it's a great experience. But there would be something special about like a Scholastic branded adult Scholastic Book Fair. if they ever continue to, if they commit to diversity, to joining all the library people, bookish people, in supporting the voices, making sure that people are seeing that they do belong in books. So again, I keep on giving you all long answers, but yeah, that's the only update I have, is that thank goodness Scholastic reversed their decision. That separate diverse collection will be disbanded come January. So that's amazing.
Yay. Our next question is from Daisy. She says, I really appreciate your positive message about libraries and library people, and those things stay with me while I'm at work, parentheses at the library, and parentheses. What classes did you take at SJSU that still stays with you after working as a librarian 5 years later?
That's a great question. So I think the classes that stick with me are that social media for libraries class that I mentioned. That is just like, that's something that now where I'm at, I'm just thankful that I took that class. I think it kind of like steered me to keep on moving towards that. I think the fact that that class exists gave me the courage to know that, yeah, this is possible. Like, yeah, people are trying to use social media to push libraries. And the other classes that stood out that have stuck with me are the classes by Penny Peck. Taking the children's librarian classes. She's a children's librarian legend. So I'm glad that I took the classes with her. I think for me, it was, I always knew, once I decided to become a librarian, I knew that I would either become like a social media librarian or a children's librarian. So I'm glad that I took 2 classes with her, and those are probably like those are probably the 2 classes that I've used the most. Her program plan, and then her budgeting plan were the 2 that stuck with me. And I mean the core classes, of course, I remember, just because those are probably the most stressful classes, just because of their importance and just the content and just the content. Even making databases, like I've never made a database as a public librarian. I rarely ever actually use databases. I'm a supervising librarian. I'm currently trying to convince my full team that they're going to serve on all the various desks, be it their librarians, library associates, library assistants, library aides. I'm like, you can be on the children's desk, and they're rightfully so. They're nervous about how they're going to serve children and serve the community without the same knowledge, same education that I and other librarians and library associates have. But I'm trying to tell them that, like, I mean, as much as like you are doing, paid for the degree, took the education, took the skills and the knowledge, but I still largely depend on Google, which I think that's one of the biggest takeaways I took from SJSU, is the skill of being able to Google. There are so many people who don't know how to search Google and find responses. So I think, yeah, Googling classes from Penny Peck, and then social media were the most impactful courses that I took at SJSU.
Great, thank you. So we have another question from Brianna, and she asks, when did you figure out that you wanted to work with kids in public libraries?
I figured out, I think my emphasis for serving kids in the library was when I was a library assistant in Vallejo. So that was probably, so I was a departmental aide for a year, almost 2 years. I was a library aide for about a year and a half, and then transferred and then got promoted to be a library assistant, about 2 years, and then so that was bouncing between Fairfield and Vallejo John F. Kennedy Library, and then I went to the Vallejo Springstown Library, the tiny library in Vallejo, and that's when I worked with now my friend, who was a former Springstown Children's Librarian, now the supervising librarian. Her and I were kind of like assigned together. We worked the same shifts, and I started kind of like shadowing her, mirroring her schedule, going to school sites with her. And that's like the stories I tell now. That's when I first like really discovered them. Like, that's when I first started being like, wow, this is something else. Like, just seeing like the joy kids have for the library. As a library assistant, assisting the librarian is when I first like was like, it would be super cool to become a children's librarian. Like, that's when I was committed to it. So much so that I thought I was going to be a children's librarian in Vallejo for for 30 years, for my full career. So I think being an assistant, helping out with librarians, I was like, oh, this would be so cool if I ever get the opportunity to serve the children of the community.
All right, so I'll go ahead and ask a question because I had a question as well. In terms of social media, at least I found in my experience when I'm working, my library, at least most of the libraries I've worked at, are usually take a risk averse sort of approach towards social media because I think they're afraid of, I don't know, I think maybe they're afraid of the response or how the patrons might react to it or anything like that. How do you go about suggesting how we can push our libraries to approach social media and view social media in a different way?
So I think it depends on where you're at. I think you all could agree that if you're in Florida, if you're in Texas, the reaction is going to be a little bit different just because of the negative connotation, the negative outcomes that come from libraries in general. But if you're like in a library friendly place like California, anywhere that like is like full on like library is the upper echelons, no matter what, I think you're in luck with just pursuing social media. But I've spoken with other people, and I'm always shocked to find out how few administrators are willing to approve accounts for libraries, like even a Facebook account, a Twitter account, an Instagram account. Like just getting that initial approval is remarkably difficult for libraries. So I think the best way to approach it is just to show successful libraries who are using social media, be it New York Public Library, Milwaukee Library, Harris County Library. Just show like the fun, the joy, the reaction that people are having to social media for libraries. I think that's the best way to do it. I don't know if this is like just the year of social media for libraries, but I always like look on even like, as much as I try to go away from Facebook, I'm still on Facebook, and I love just seeing like the reaction that's for libraries is happening on Facebook, which is probably like the most difficult way to approach library social media, just because of the negativity that comes from Facebook, because of the audience, because of the age group, is that they're just programmed to be anti what's going on in the world now. They're very anti drag queen story time. They're very much in favor of book bans for people of color, for LGBTQIA plus. They believe it's an agenda. But so yeah, I think just honestly, just if you just show your administrators the positivity of social media, show them what you're trying to do. I think for my library, we were lucky where they were just like, yeah, you guys are having fun, you guys are doing a good job, keep it going. But for libraries where they're just like, I don't know if it's worth it, I would just focus on showing them like the extensive amount of positivity that outweighs the negative voices, which is somewhat hypocritical for me because I'm always focused on the negative voices of trolls, but the trolls really are just extremely loud voices. There are probably 1,000 positive voices to 2 negative trolls, but the trolls again are just extremely well versed at drawing attention. So just focus on the positivity. If you just flood them with that amount of people, they have to at least try. I think if they don't try, it makes them look foolish. It makes them look behind the eight ball, behind the curve. So yeah, I think if you just find as many positive stories as you can, talk with your community, encourage them to promote social media, to talk about you all getting social media accounts. That's what's important. Like every library system I've ever encountered has been like, we need that community buy-in, and it's the biggest thing. And there's so many communities that want you all to succeed on social media. So I would just focus on doing what you do every day as a library worker, make those connections, and then just focus on the social media aspect and wait for the rest to come. And if your library administrators refuse to do it, then that's on them. And you could be like, we could be doing this, we could be doing that, and also just keep on trying. Like be a squeaky wheel. Keep on pursuing that mission of getting it launched. And eventually they'll have no choice, and you'll be able to start having fun, making TikToks, making reels, all that good stuff.
All right, thank you. We have another question from Christina. Yes, he asks, how have you noticed ways in which the pandemic has forced libraries to connect with patrons online or using virtual programming like Twitch streams for library users to watch?
So I've not noticed Twitch streams. I'm a person who I grew up with video games, but not really. I literally yesterday I bought a Twitch, so my Twitch, I'm sorry, not Twitch, that's not a game, that's not a console. I brought a Switch, the other word, yesterday as opposed to arrive on Monday. So I'm very excited for that. I mean, I'm a person, I grew up with Donkey Kong, Crash Bandicoot, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I played Madden and NBA 2K throughout my life. During the you asked about the pandemic, so I believe that people either got a pet, got addicted to TikTok, or got addicted to Animal Crossing during the pandemic. I chose a pet and TikTok. I did not do Animal Crossing. So who knows? I may add the trifecta to my life come next week. But those are the things. But I do, in saying that, I think Twitch is a tremendous asset for libraries in social media, especially as so many libraries are pursuing video game collections. It's just a great way to draw people in. I mean, even if it's playing Roblox, there's so many kids with like Five Nights at Freddy's, and again, Animal Crossing. I think the first game I'm going to get for the Switch that is coming with my bundle is the Zelda Kingdom game. So yeah, there's just so many, there's so many options. I think that's what's incredible about social media and libraries, is just being able to do things like that. I hope that answered the question. I'm sorry if it didn't.
All right, everyone, please don't feel free to type any questions you want to have answered. Don't feel shy. We'll get to all of them for sure. I'll go ahead and ask another one. I guess, especially working in a public library setting, do you ever feel any sort of social fatigue over time? Would you say like normally, are you like introverted or extroverted, and how do you deal, especially for an introverted person, with all like kind of repeated social interactions, especially when you're working with children?
Yeah, so I think a lot of people are often mistaken by my trajectory. As often as I say it, I have to keep on reminding people that I am not a children's librarian any longer. Even though most of my stories come from the children's librarian, children's desk, it's just because I'm the supervising librarian, so I oversee the adult services department, children's department, and teen department. And even though the circulation department is run by a supervising library assistant, I'm her direct supervisor, so I literally oversee 15 to 20 people. And I just say that just because people keep on thinking I'm a children's librarian, but I'm just so often on the children's desk, just because that's the beauty of public libraries, is everybody does so many different things, so many different hats, just helping out so many people, because a public library is for everybody. But getting to the crux of your question, I often feel fatigued by social interactions. Again, I'm not at all shy about the things that I struggle with. I struggle with anxiety, with depression, with panic disorder, with nightmare disorders. I often have nightmares several nights throughout the week. And that's honestly why I rely so much on those stories, is just to get me through, to keep on coming back to it. So I don't think that it's not necessarily fair to me. It's not fair to the people who come to the library, but that's how I keep on coming back, is just like relying on those stories, just because, I mean, the public library, I think, as important as it is for libraries to welcome everybody, to make sure that they all belong, it definitely does also equate to there being some negative reactions, negative responses to working in the library, just because you're dealing with those people who can't control their emotions, who can't control what they say. So you have to struggle with oh, I'm trying to give them this, but they're going to come at me. They're going to be wrong. Like there's a loading dock in the staff area, and almost every single day I have to ask a person to leave the loading dock, find another place to be until the library opens, which is very tough for me, a person who's trying to to include the unhoused community, to keep them coming back. So I'm a chronically online person. I'm also a chronic overthinker. It is tough. There is a lot of times where like social interactions. To answer your question, I am an introvert. I think at this point in my life, I'm an introverted extrovert, but not so much extro. I think not so much extroverted by like the world standards. Like I'm not at all a loud, boisterous person. You're not gonna know I'm in the room unless someone announces me. But I'm a friendly person. I am an energetic person. I like asking people questions. I bother people in the library every single day. That's why I hear so many stories. Is because I'm just pestering them throughout the day. So yeah, I think just focusing on the positivity, trying to keep going. I mean, being a supervising librarian is the most stressful library job I've ever had. But I was also like burnt out, feeling difficult by interactions socially when I was a children's librarian, library associate, um, library assistant, and it's always been the same thing, just making connections with my coworkers, supporting them, encouraging the amazing things that they do. That's why I always try to get across that every positive story that people hear from me about the library is honestly the fruit of those who are surrounding me. They make the connections, they create the programs, the plans that drive everybody in, and I just happen to be at the desk helping people out, observing things. Like again, being a shy, introverted person, that's what I always did. I just observe things. I like listening. I love hearing people's stories, hearing about what makes them tick, what they're passionate about. Um, and then just keeping it going, sharing a little bit of me with them, having them share themselves with me, the joy of books, the joy of libraries, and just keeping it going day after day, just trying to keep people going while I'm trying to keep myself going.
You for the response. We have another question from Charlene. She asks, do you work or partner with public or private school librarians?
Yes, it is. It's always been one of my favorite things to do. Is to partner with local schools, with local school librarians. I think school librarians, school mediateks, library mediateks are the hardest working people in libraries. I work for a public library, and public library people work remarkably hard. But I am in awe of what school librarians, school library mediateks do. I've been asked countless times to become the district librarian for the various places where I work, and I always tell them I will absolutely not be doing that. They work far too hard for not enough money. I'm very aware that library people are not in it for the money, but I have to be able to live, especially in California, and school library people just don't make enough for what they do. Honestly, like I'm a huge sports fan, and I am honest when I say I would absolutely sacrifice public library people making NBA money if it meant school library people made NBA money, because they do work that hard with not enough resources, not enough funds. I think just showing that teachers don't make enough money shows exactly what school library people make for. But they're my favorite people to partner with. I think that my outreach technique was based on making connections with the schools. My mom is a teacher, my cousins are teachers, so I know how overworked they are. And I know that they're just like similarly with public library people, they're like, I can't answer your email, I got to answer all the other people's emails. So I started going to the schools, just making face-to-face conversations with principals. I was often told by school library people that they're just like, we can't do anything unless the principal signs off. So I would literally I would just walk into school and say, hey, is your principal available? I only need about 5 minutes of their time. And it would literally take less than that for me to just do exactly what I'm doing now, be remarkably annoying about my love for libraries. And they're just like, okay, cool, you can stop bothering me. Go talk with the school librarian, with the library media tech. You can have your school assembly. You can go class to class and talk about the library. And I'm honestly in awe. I'm shocked by how much they love the library, how much they like push every single book to kids. School libraries are not big, but they have to be focused on accelerated reader level. Public library people know nothing about that because we're just trying to introduce the love of libraries, whereas school libraries are focused on getting kids at reading levels, second grade, third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade, and on. And I have no idea how they do it, because it's hard enough for me just to convince people to fall in love with books at the various ages. And that's what even led to, like, I think one of my proudest library moments is getting ready to happen soon. Is Raina Telgemeier is going to come to my library. And what she's gonna do with the day that she comes to my library, she's gonna do a school assembly at a local school first. So I think that's the biggest thing for me, is that she is gonna see the full-on library joy of school libraries and then public libraries. I've literally been reaching out to Brandon Telgemeier's people for the last 5 years, along with my library administrators, trying to make it happen. And it's all because of the joy that the school librarians do, and then just being able to make the various connections. So I think that's like of the utmost importance. Like, as you get into library work, you'll learn about strategic plans. I'm very sorry for that. It's going to be the bane of your existence to talk about strategic plans as a library worker. But if you just focus on those kind of things about reaching the schools, that's what libraries, as much as libraries are like, how do we reach the adults? How do we reach the teens? It's always going to be about the kids, because they have that unique imagination, curiosity, and just general joy for libraries.
All right, so we have our next question from Christina. She asks, what mental health supports would you or do you encourage for your staff and for librarians in general?
I think so first off, there's not enough support for library workers and library staff, if I'm being perfectly honest. I'm gonna be make sure there's none of my people in this conversation. I'm gonna be off work next week for mental health reasons, just to take care of my own health, to do different things with people, to talk with my doctors. So honestly, I think the first step is just taking advantage of your sick days, taking time off for yourself when you need it, not having shame, not feeling guilty. I say that as a person who feels ashamed, remarkably difficult for taking time off. But it is important to take care of yourself first, so you can keep on helping your coworkers, helping other people, being honest with them when you tell them to do that. And then reach out to local NAMI groups. Read mental health books. Broken by Jenny Lawson is one of my favorite mental health books. Jenny Lawson is a comedian who goes through remarkable mental health struggles, but she has a unique way of making it very humorous, very funny with what she deals with anxiety and depression. It is an awful title, but Jeanette McCurdy's I'm glad your mom died is one of my favorite books that I've recommended in the last probably 2 decades. And then after that, I would honestly say, like, as you're an adult, just return to books, your comfort books, comfort shows. I listen to the Henry Huggins collection repeatedly. I re-listen to Chronicles of Narnia, to Sideways Stories from Wayside School, to Holes. Just focusing on that comfort, finding your support team. And then just trusting yourself around your coworkers. If you think you can talk to them about mental health, be open. If you don't think it, I think don't risk it is not the right words, because I'm always for normalizing, for having those conversations. I think it's important from library staff, from communities. I think just being honest with yourself, taking the necessary time off. It's something that I've just now learned 10 years into being a library worker. Supporting other people, that's what I'm trying to do as a supervisor, is to just approve people's time when they need mental health time off. I'm just like, yeah, go for it, please do. There's so many different things. I think just talk with your people, talk with your loved ones. Be honest. It's remarkably hard. I think as I'm starting to talk more and more about social media, I get more and more questions from people who are like, I'm noticing something, are you okay? And it's still hard for me to be very honest with people all the time. But just doing what I can, trying to keep people going, trying to keep them pursuing the book joy, the library joy. I think it's always hit me whenever I talk with library people, library kids who go through things. I've dealt with library kids who are suicidal, who are going through it. I think that's the biggest thing to me, is like trying to enhance my own knowledge, my own understanding, so I can help them. Especially because even like trying to get them support is oftentimes where it's tough for the police to come by, for the ambulance to come by, even though my library is literally between a fire station and a police department, it'll still sometimes take them 5 to 10 minutes to arrive. So just even though that's not my job, it's you'll often hear like how many hats library people wear, and that's one of them. I think that's like one of the greatest roles that I've accepted as a library worker, is just being a support, being a cheerleader. So I think to answer that question, I think those are the few steps I have, but I hope that you build like a countless, endless book of ways to address mental health for yourself and others as library workers. But don't be afraid, don't be ashamed to prioritize yourself, because you can't help others without helping yourself.
All right, so we have another question from Brianna, and it is, did you ever consider working in another type of library? Academic, special, etc. Have you ever considered that?
I was a part of the special libraries group for SJSU. And I think I wasn't resume building. I think I was just looking for something to do while in school. I don't think so. I think I always knew I was going to be either children's librarian or social media librarian. But I was always open to it. I mean, I think at SGSU I heard about like the 49ers having a librarian, Library of Congress. Actually, you know what? I take it back. I think the only time I thought about being a special librarian was Kaiser has a lot of hospital libraries. And if people always ask, like, if you were a librarian, what would you be? I would probably be a registered nurse. So I always thought like that would be like the best of both worlds, being in the hospital library, helping people out. But other than that, I always knew I was going to be in public libraries. So probably now where I'm at is like the first time I've been like, oh, special libraries, like being a library advocate, being in various settings. But I think I think because I was already fully immersed in public libraries when I began my program, I always knew how difficult it is to get into academic libraries. So that was never something that was on my radar. And I think just having the credential for school libraries, visiting school libraries, is what kind of deterred me from pursuing that angle. I when I was first applying for librarian jobs, I was very lucky where, again, I graduated in 4 semesters and started applying to become a librarian shortly after. I did apply to become a prison librarian because my cousin was a teacher in the Vacaville prison nearby where I live. So I was like, oh, I've heard that it's pretty easy to get a prison librarian job just because you're basically in prison working for that job. So I was like, oh, that was rough, but it would be like a good, like, oh, here you go. This is everything you're gonna learn as a librarian. So I kind of dabbled in various special library jobs, but public libraries were always like my goal, as always where I saw myself being if I was going to be somewhere long term.
All right, thank you. So we have another question here from Lauren, who's joining us from across the pond. So thank you for joining us, Lauren. I know it's really late there, but yeah, I'll go ahead and read it out. So, given that you have such an incredible platform, I know you've been able to connect with authors on a different way than most LIS folks. What can library people do to support writers/illustrators? And how can we get larger authors/writers, etc., to help support libraries, especially today with the current climate?
So I think luckily they're starting to. I think Jason Reynolds is a gigantic supporter of libraries. I'm lucky enough to consider Kelly Yang to be a friend. She's a remarkable supporter of libraries. Same with Maria Telgemeier. But I think honestly, and I say that again from a person, as Lauren said, from a person who's honored to have who's shocked to have a large following. So for me, it's a little bit different, the response I get. But I think just using social media to your advantage, not being afraid to reach out to authors, to illustrators, asking them to support, doing what you can, and also just being honest with them, with your administration, asking them what you can offer. I think I always preface every conversation saying we're a public library. We only have this much funds to offer. But just being authentic, not trying to get things for free as much as you're like. If you just want to support libraries, that'd be amazing. We would love to highlight your work, your books in our library, and just being authentic, and also remembering that as much as authors and illustrators want to support libraries and do things for free all the time, they also don't make as much money as people think they do. The big ones do. Amy Tan, Brandon Togemeyer, Nick Stone, Jason Reynolds, Jerry Kraft, Kelly Yang. They're all making various figures for every single job. Jeff Kinney for Dave Pilkey for every appearance they make. But they're still trying to help. But they're often hamstrung by the publishers. The publishers have so much control over their books, over their work, just because of the contract they signed. So as you're reaching out to authors, illustrators, if you're getting rejected, if the amount is too much for what you have in your budget, just keep in mind that that's why it is. It's not because authors and illustrators want to not work with you. It's just that they're stuck. They have to make sure that the agent gets paid, the publishers get paid. So as you're reaching out, I would utilize social media. Try to highlight their work. Make sure that they notice you. Authors and illustrators are largely on social media these days. They're trying to use that as their platform. They love support. They're people. They're humans. If you're proud of them and you make it known, they're gonna see it. They're much more likely than Taylor Swift, Rihanna, than Keanu Reeves to see what you say about them. So if that's how you make that connection. Long before I got the following I'm honored to have, I was able to make connections with people via social media, just by being like not an overbearing fan, but just like being like proud of the work and just being like, oh, I loved this book. I love what you did. I loved your picture. It's so cool. And then I think they were just like, oh, this person is just authentic, just genuine about them. They're not a weirdo as much as I'm a gigantic weirdo. I'm not that sort of weird. And just showing us. So I think even when I had 500, 600, 700 followers, I still was lucky enough to have conversations with different people just by showing them how much I love books, how much they mean to me, what they're doing for kids and for me as a lifelong bookworm.
All right, so we have another question from Phoebe. And Phoebe asks, can you tell us about your transition from being a children's librarian to supervising librarian? What were some of the challenges, if any?
Yes, absolutely. So I actually went from children's librarian to marketing librarian to supervising librarian. So the children's librarian for about 3 years in Vallejo. So that was doing story times, class visits, setting up summer reading programs, setting up lunches at the library, setting up the in and out program. Basically, my job was to convince kids, families, library grown-ups to fall in love with the library and library books. That was sheer joy. Either outreach, visiting sites, visiting places all the time, or on desk when at the library. And the pandemic hit, so I saw that we were nowhere close to opening the library, getting back. So I applied as a marketing librarian to start pushing the library via social media. I took that job. I oversaw Solano County Library's social media, Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, and so on, as well as building their new website, answering emails, that sort of thing. So that was a gigantic transition from public facing to behind the scenes while still being in the public here and there, but not as much as I was. So I think the biggest transition, the biggest shock for me was going from children's librarian around people all the time, doing story times, doing school assemblies, talking to 500 kids, 40 kids every single week at story time, to being in the marketing department where it was only me and two other coworkers, supervisor, another library associate, which I'm very grateful for that time in my life. They're two of my closest friends. So I'm honored for that part. But then going to supervising librarian after being fully immersed in library world, front scenes, behind the scenes, and then going back to being in the library world, but having to oversee people, having to work on schedules, having to work on just supporting people with what's difficult for them. That was a shock, just like that. Just people being people, going through life, coming to work with all of their emotions was the biggest shock. Just like it is a true thing. As much as I'm not the best person to encourage people to become a supervising librarian. I think it's important. Like I did it just because I grew up in the library work where I'm currently a supervisor. Got my first library card, got my first library job. I never saw people of color behind the library desk as a kid. So for me, even though you don't know I'm a supervisor, unless you see my badge, especially the way I look, giant frizzy hair, tattoos all over my body. I just don't. I'm not the person people think of as a supervisor when they come in. So that's what's important to me. But I think that's the biggest transition, just going from just doing your thing, doing your kind of like basically like almost like staying in your library lane as a regular librarian. And then supervisor is just like full fledged. You're part of the management, you're part of the administration, you're part of pushing the library policies forward. You have more responsibility. You deal with people's problems. You don't get to be the good guy all the time. I think that's the hardest part, is that you don't get to make everybody happy. If there are problems, you have to deal with it. You can't just brush them all aside. But then there are positives. I mean, you get to have discretion. You get to say, I'm going to give you a second chance. I'm going to give you a break. So there are negatives. There are a lot of hard parts, but there's also a lot of good parts. It's the best chance you have to impact good. People always ask, like, am I ever going to pursue administration, management, being a director? I'd rather not, but if I do, I have a plan to overhaul the library before they fire me, increase funding, create a 4-day work week, that kind of thing before they get rid of me. That's the beauty of if I ever get to that position. I'm a very hard person to fire because I've been working there too long. So I'm like, I've got at least 2 months before you can do anything, and then you're gonna have to unwind it. So that's my ultimate goal. I'm 33 years old. I won't be able to retire until I'm 62 years old. So I've got another 29 years before I start making my library dreams come true by making the board of supervisors and county officials upset with the decisions I make.
All right. Thank you again for all those great responses. We'll go ahead and start to unwind here it's already past 7:30. Again, thank you so much for attending this, agreeing to speak with us. We definitely appreciate your presence here and everything that you've shared with us. I also like to thank everyone who attended today, and if you're viewing the recording, I appreciate the questions as well. So yeah, we'll go ahead and close down. Any closing remarks, if you'd like to make any closing remarks before we close down?
Yeah, no. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm always honored to do this kind of thing. I never know how much longer I'm going to be able to do this kind of thing, but whenever I can, I love to do it, especially for the school where I went to. Again, being a part of the Special Library Association, being able to offer any. I don't think I'm a wise library person at all. I often tell kids I am the library person that they bring in to show you that you are smarter than a librarian. But I'm just having so much fun encouraging library people. I'm so proud that there are so many more people who want to work for library. I think that's like whenever people ask like what's the biggest outcome, like biggest joy I get from my library social media success, is getting those messages of positivity. People asking how you can become a librarian. People showing me their kids getting library cards, themselves getting library cards. We got multiple messages from people saying, I don't know if you know, but you're probably responsible for thousands of people getting library cards. I don't think that's true, but if anybody's encouraged to get a library card, I love that so much that people across the world are getting library cards, going back to the library. Like, as awkward as it is for me to be recognized in public, every time it happens, it's always like a library guy, book guy, something. It's like I love that every time it happens, awkward as it is, it's always that connection. It's always the library, books, or mental health. So I love the reasons that it's happening, that people are remembering their local library, that they're encouraged to support their local library, to thank their other library staff, and keep on going. And yeah, that's my favorite part, is when they don't talk about me. They talk about how much they love their children's librarian, their adult librarian, their teen librarian. their favorite librarian. I love that other librarians are getting recognized. I love seeing how many stories people are telling on TikTok, on Instagram about their library journeys, their library stories. And that's been my whole point. I'm going to keep on doing it until the end of time. But I would love for that to become just like the whole bomb of existence. I love that Steph Curry is doing some book clubs. Malala is doing book clubs. No Name has been all about books for a very long time. I mean, Dolly Parton is the queen of books. All of those kind of things. So I think that's like those are my closing remarks. Is to never forget. Like I'm the chair of my Equity, Diversity, Inclusion Committee, and I think belonging is that like unforgetting, most important. The fourth word is like making sure people feel that they belong in libraries, as we talk about. We didn't talk about it, but that's banned books, that's book access, that's book joy. Is that belonging atmosphere? Is making sure if you're unhoused, if you're mentally ill, if you're anxious, if you're trying to get into the library world, that you do belong. There is a spot for you. I think that's what people have not felt for a very long time. I think that's what I am still capable of being better at, and that's what each of you are capable of. And I'm very excited to see your futures. I am not an unreachable person. If you ever want to get in touch with me, please feel free. I don't. I think Instagram is the best way. It may take me a couple days. But I eventually read or respond to every single message on Instagram. So if you ever have any questions, Instagram is the way to go. LinkedIn is the way to go. I'm not shy about my library, Solano County Library, Fairfield Civic Center Library. You can email my library. You can call my library. That's how Jeff Kinney's people got a hold of me. They called my library. So you can get a hold of me. I'm not trying to be a secretive in the background person. I'm honored to help any library person I can get to the forefront of what they're trying to do.
All right, great. Then thank you again for coming out, Mychal, and thank you everyone for coming out. I hope you all have a great Friday and happy Halloween. Have a very spooky weekend. Stay safe. All right, watch some scary movies, eat plenty of candy, floss, also floss. But yeah, thank you everyone. All right, goodbye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Good job, Tyrell.